Hello and welcome. Thank you very much for joining in this short talk on dealing with difficult people. In these next few minutes, I'm going to spend some time sharing with you what I hope you'll find to be very practical methods that you can use to deal with those challenging people in your life. So you might agree. Oh, I should say that this short teaching also is mainly based on this book, How to Solve Our Human Problems, by the founder of our tradition. His name is Geshe Kelsang Gyatso Rinpoche. And in this slim volume are so many different perspectives or ways of thinking that really will change our attitude towards difficult people and difficult situations in our life. So I highly recommend it. So you might agree that relationships, generally speaking, are hard enough, but when we have a difficult person in our life, that relationship, of course, becomes even more challenging. And so while I'm teaching on this topic, please try to bring to mind a challenging person so that it feels sort of practical and relatable to you. If you check, oftentimes when we identify a person in our life who's difficult and that relationship is difficult, what we often try to do is we try to deal with the person and the relationship. For example, if there's somebody at work, a coworker perhaps, who is just generally in a bad mood, right? They never show up to work cheery or anything like that. They're actually quite sour, and they're often finding criticism with most people, including us. And there's no prospect of our getting a new job. We really like this job, except for this one person. And so, normally, when we are in a situation like this, for example, at work, we might spend quite a bit of time trying to address our relationship with that person. That person, this relationship, we might call an outer problem. So, in generally, we try to spend quite a bit of time addressing or at least thinking about how can I make this better? Maybe how can I get this person to be in a better mood? How can I get them to stop criticizing me? And we might think of sitting down to talking to them or bringing in another person as a mediator, something like this. So, what I'm saying is that we often spend a lot of time externally trying to solve the outer problem as we see it. At the same time, though, there's an inner problem that is simultaneously occurring, which is our own discomfort. Maybe their presence actually makes us uncomfortable or tense. Or maybe we become annoyed because we have to spend a lot of time every week with them. And so we feel like life would be far better if they weren't around, if they moved on to another department or job somewhere. And so what I'm saying is we have the outer problem of the person, the situation of the relationship, but we also have the inner problem of our own painful feelings. And what tends to happen is we think if I can just make them change, if I can have them stop criticizing or maybe lighten their mood, then what might happen is I'll feel better. So, in other words, we think if I can solve the outer problem, the inner problem of my own painful feelings will change, will improve. And so much of our efforts are placed here. In Buddhist practice, however, we take a lot of time to investigate and actually solve the inner problem. Thought of another way, what if that person never changes their mood? Maybe what if they're always going to be in a bad mood? And we've tried a lot to try to change and help and influence them in a positive way. I think we need to be prepared that they may not change despite our best efforts. Can we be happy with that? And can we instead direct our attention to the inner problem, again, which are our own painful feelings? This is actually where I want to spend much of our time now going forward in this talk, is to address how we can start to cope with the discomfort that we often face when we're around difficult people. So I want to present at least a couple of methods. The first actually is breathing meditation. So breathing meditation can be very simple. We can spend just a few minutes, maybe 10 minutes, focusing on the sensation of our breath. So we find a quiet spot perhaps, and we just turn our attention inward, and we focus gently on the inhalation and exhalation of our breath. Initially, our mind is going to be very busy and active, but if we persist gently, gradually, what we'll find is that that busyness starts to subside, and what we discover is our mind calms down and we feel better. If we practice this often enough, what we start to discover is that peace is actually the very fabric of my mind. Venerable Geshe-la, in the same book, How to Solve Our Human Problems, near the end of the appendix, he says, when the disturbance of our disturbed mind subsides, what we find is peace. What we're left with is peace. And so it teaches us that the actual nature of our mind is peace. And so what I would recommend as a practical tool is actually to try to do some breathing meditation throughout your week. Try to do it often. And what you'll find is that the overall busyness of your mind decreases and the overall peace in your mind increases. And so what I'm saying is that overall, you'll have a greater level of peace and stability in your mind. And so then when maybe you're back at work, faced with this difficult person, that greater level of overall peace in your mind will act a bit like a cushion, if you will, in your mind. And we'll find ourselves being less reactive to the bad mood of our coworker. Also, we can do breathing meditation as preparation for a meeting with that difficult person. We might think, right, I've got a meeting Tuesday morning with this person, and I need to come prepared. And so we might take a few minutes before our meeting to still and calm our mind through breathing meditation, connect with our peace, and then through the force of mindfulness, we try to stay in touch with that feeling for as long as possible. Admittedly, at the beginning, we may not be able to sustain that peace throughout our meeting, but what we'll start to discover is that peaceful feeling can last for longer and longer. Also, we can do breathing meditation after that meeting. For example, maybe we do end up, our mind does become a little bit uncomfortable or tense or annoyed. After the meeting's finished, we can again, find a comfortable place to do some breathing meditation and calm our mind back down. Essentially, we're using the situation of a difficult person to train our mind in breathing meditation. Interestingly, difficult people can be an opportunity for us to become more sincere in our practice of meditation. Whereas previously we might have thought, yeah, breathing meditation is nice. It's great that people do that. I understand it has many benefits. But when we think, I have this very real challenge in my life, it might spur us or encourage us to take the time to create the time in our life to do some breathing meditation practically so that we can find some peace, so that we are less reactive and feel better as we are dealing with challenging people in our life. Another practice that I'd like to briefly introduce is the practice of patient acceptance. So whereas breathing meditation gives us the opportunity to maintain some peace temporarily, patient acceptance is a very deep and profound spiritual practice that eventually gives us the ability to develop a mind that, as Venerable Geshe-la says, is as stable as a mountain and as calm as the depths of the sea. I love that idea, that analogy, that feeling. You can really start to appreciate the strength, the stability, the courage of patient acceptance. So in the book, How to Solve Our Human Problems, Geshe Kelsang, the author, defines patient acceptance. Patience is a mind that is able to accept fully and happily whatever occurs. It is much more than just gritting our teeth and putting up with things. Being patient means to welcome wholeheartedly whatever arises, having given up the idea that things should be other than what they are. It is always possible to be patient. There is no situation so bad that it cannot be accepted patiently with an open, accommodating, and peaceful heart. This is one of my favorite paragraphs of the entire book because it teaches us something that we perhaps have never known, which is what authentic patience is. In particular, I really love these two words, to welcome wholeheartedly. So patience is a mind that is able to welcome wholeheartedly. In this instance, with a difficult person, two things I would say. We're able to welcome wholeheartedly the difficult feelings that we're having. Maybe we're feeling annoyed or tense or just generally uncomfortable. Can I welcome wholeheartedly that tension in my mind? Generally, we reject that feeling. We think, I don't like that feeling. I don't want that feeling. Excuse me. And so we don't welcome wholeheartedly. We don't welcome one bit. And so the idea of patience is that if we can actually try to both recognize but then welcome wholeheartedly that feeling that's arising, then what starts to happen, as you'll discover if you try this out, is that your mind begins to relax. Interestingly enough, we tend to think if I run away from the feeling by distracting myself, for instance, that I'll feel better. But as you might have observed in your own life, just running away from our emotional feelings, our painful feelings, doesn't resolve the problem whatsoever. Actually, those feelings persist. They come back each and every time almost. So I think it makes logical sense to try something new, something different. If we've always run away from our feelings or tried to push them down or something like this, it makes sense, I think, to try something different. What is it like to actually welcome wholeheartedly those feelings that are arising in my mind? One benefit to that is that we hold ourselves back from saying and doing things that we might later regret. Why do I say this? Well, sometimes when, for instance, if we go back to our difficult person at work, if they're pushing our buttons, right? They're saying or doing things, they just showed up to that meeting in a foul mood, perhaps, and it's really triggering us. We are responding, our mind is getting really unhappy, and that pressure in our mind is building. What often happens is we say something, maybe slightly unkind, maybe slightly off, maybe even quite unkind in return. Maybe we retaliate. And so, if we can instead stop that process of building energy and building tension in our mind by welcoming that feeling instead, what we'll find is we have a better ability to hold ourselves back. Additionally, we find some peace. Probably most importantly is that we find some peace by putting this particular instruction into practice. Secondly, the practice of patient acceptance. While welcoming wholeheartedly, we can practice patient acceptance as it relates to our coworker. Later on, a few pages later in the same chapter, Why We Get Angry, Geshe Kelsang writes, in reality, most of our emotional problems are nothing more than a failure to accept things as they are, in which case it is patient acceptance, rather than attempting to change externals, that is the solution. For example, many of our relationship problems arise because we do not accept our partner as he or she is. In these cases, the solution is not to change our partner into what we would like him to be, but to accept him fully as he is. Once we fully accept other people as they are without the slightest judgment or reservation, as all the enlightened beings accept us, then there is no basis for problems in our relations with others. Problems do not exist outside our mind, so when we stop seeing other people as problems, they stop being problems for us. So our practice of welcoming wholeheartedly, of course, we can address or we can take that same attitude and relate that to the person we find difficult and really try to honestly accept them just as they are without wishing for them to be different. And again, what we'll find through this practice, gently, gradually, as time goes on, that our mind can develop a deeper feeling of peace. And then if we need to try to help that person, if we feel inspired to try to help that person with a calm mind, we can do so. And we can offer very practical, helpful advice coming from a peaceful mind, most importantly. So I hope you found these two practices of breathing meditation and patient acceptance helpful for you. And I hope you, or I wish you all success in your meditation and spiritual practice. Thank you.